Hello guys and gals, and welcome back to another reading of The Little Giant Book of Whodunits by Conrad and illustrated by Matt LaFleur. That music selection was An Ending by Toby Fox from Undertale. If you haven't checked out that game or that soundtrack, I highly recommend it. The music is awesome, and it is a game that was fully constructed by one person, which is a marvel and a feat in itself. And Toby Fox allows the use of his music. So that's good for me because I get to use it in my videos. So yay. Anyways. And plus it's really good music to use in videos. Anyways. I've almost lost my train of thought, but I just found it again. We are going to get right back into this. In the last one we were... Oh, this is number 8, by the way. Oh, number 8. There we go. Number 8. In the last episode, we ended off with the Emery Emerald. It was about a jewel heist by a colorblind thief. Very, very compelling. And we're going to start off with the Bad Samaritan, not to be confused with the story of the Good Samaritan, which is a really good story. Be kind to everyone. Those are good words to live by. But we're going to read about the Bad Samaritan. I guess this is the way you don't want to be. Stan Rogers. I wonder if that's in relation to Steve Rogers, Captain America. Anyways, Stan Rogers winced at the flesh wound in his left shoulder, feeling lucky to be alive. My partner and I were delivering a payroll to the logging camp, he told the officers at his hospital bedside. It was late at night when the car broke down. I pulled over. Benny got out, but I stayed inside. Those are the rules. A minute later, a passing motorist stopped to help. Benny and the guy checked the engine, fiddled with the connections a couple of times. It almost started. I couldn't see their faces because they were standing right in front of the headlights. Oh. They were standing right in front and the headlights were slung low. But I saw that the guy pulled a gun from his jacket. He shot Benny in the chest, just like that. Benny stumbled off to the side and collapsed. The guy came around to the driver's side. I kept trying to start the engine. He must have known about the payroll because he opened the rear door. Okay. The rear door. And grabbed it right off the back seat. He slammed the door and was coming up to me when the engine finally turned over. I slipped into gear just as he got a shot off. Stan winced again. Gee, if I hadn't run into you guys, I might have fainted or bled to death. The highway patrol brought the two lone motorists whose cars fit the description Stan had given of the killer's vehicle. Neither suspect had the payroll bag, and the murder weapon was found back at the scene, wiped clean of prints. The only hope for an arrest lay in Stan's memory. The first suspect was tall and with a blonde crew cut and a small spiderweb tattoo on his right wrist. The second suspect was shorter and left-handed. His hair was also short but dark. Stan examined photographs of both clean-shaven men but could not make an identification. The senior officer led the way out of Stan's hospital room. From what he told us about the attacker, I think it's clear who it was, who done it, and what gave him away. Solution is on page 305, and as always, we're going to just put a little bookmark in here. Okay. And 305. Okay. Oh, too far. Here we go. The Bad Samaritan. Here we are. This book is kind of small, so it's kind of hard to hold down one-handed. There was no attacker. Stan had killed his partner, hidden the payroll bag off the side of the road, then shot himself in the shoulder to add believability. The hole in Stan's story lay in his description. If the two men were checking the engine, then the car's hood would have been up, and would not have been able to see them standing right in front of the car. He also wouldn't have been able to see the killer pull the gun from his jacket, and he certainly wouldn't have been able to drive off, not with the hood still up. That is a good point. I was kind of wondering about that, but it just completely slipped my mind. Okay. Next we have, I'm just going to check here, the around the clock mirror. Okay. I'm making sure that I have the adequate number of things right. Okay. Tornado Allie, except it's spelled A-L-L-I-E. Allie. Okay. The air in Prairie Flats had been calm all morning, but by noon the wind had whipped up out of the east, and just a half an hour later, a small, rainless tornado was pummeling the farming community, its funnel leaving behind a path of destruction and at least one fatality. The body of Allie Brinker was found lying in a ditch. There was a gash in the young woman's forehead and a trickle of blood that had fallen in neat round drops onto the ground. Not far away, a broken, bloodied fence post led the police to an obvious conclusion. The wind had torn up the post and sent it flying into her head. I blame myself, Allie's Uncle Nate told the neighbors. She was at my place playing with her 1-year-old niece. Just as the wind was picking up, Allie decided to run back home across the fields. I told her to stay. The radio was warning of twisters. I should have stopped her. Okay. After the tornado passed, Allie's boyfriend Josh had gone out looking for her. Last night we had a fight, Josh moaned. I wanted to make up, but no one knew where Allie was. I had a feeling something bad must have happened. I must have driven past the field twice, but I never saw her in the ditch. It was Allie's older sister, Beth, who discovered the body. I was on my way to Uncle Nate's to pick up my daughter. The wind was still strong, so I took the path down by the long ditch where it's easier to walk. I almost fell over her. Beth was still shivering from the horrible shock. The authorities were all prepared to call it accidental, a tragic example of nature's fury. But then a young deputy sheriff noticed something, a clue that not only told them it was murder, but who the most likely suspect would be, who done it, and what was the clue. Okay, we need page 344 for this one. Let me quickly just put a little bookmark in this. And we are going to, what was it? Sorry, 344, okay. I think that's the last page. Nope, not quite. Tornado Alley. The neat round drops of blood indicated that Allie had been hit while there was little, if any, wind. Otherwise, the drops would have been blown into a long spray pattern on the ground. Since the wind was still blowing strong when Beth discovered the body, that means that Allie had been attacked before the wind started, certainly before the tornado passed by. Uncle Nate must be lying. Allie couldn't have left his house after the wind picked up. By that time, she was already dead. So I guess it was Uncle Nate that killed her. I don't know. Okay, the housewarming theft. Miranda Rich could hardly wait to move into her new home. In fact, okay, it says house, but home, house, I use the terms interchangeably. Miranda Rich could hardly wait to move into her new house. In fact, a trio of workmen were still making their final repairs and installations on that April morning when Miranda brought over her expensive entertainment system and stacked it in the corner of the living room. The next day, Miranda arrived to find the electronic unit gone. The only thing left behind was a strip of black plastic tape the burglar had used to hold open the latch of the rear kitchen door. Looks like a crime of opportunity, the officer from the burglary unit told her. All three workmen were here and saw the system. All three of them heard you on the telephone setting up a dinner date for last night. Knowing the house would be empty, one of them simply taped open the latch and came back later. No fingerprints had been left behind, and the officer didn't hold out much hope. Black tape means electrical tape. I'm just going to put that out here. But he interviewed the suspects anyway, hoping two of them would have ironclad alibis. I was at Philharmonic Hall, Peter the plumber testified as he showed off a torn ticket stub. None of my friends like the symphony, so I always go alone. They were doing Beethoven's Ninth with a full chorus. A not to be missed experience. Ed the electrician had gone to the movies. He didn't have a stub, but the movie had just opened last night, and he could repeat the entire plot and half of the jokes. After the movie, I went straight home. I'm an early riser, and I need my sleep. Max the painter had rented a video and bought takeout Chinese food. I was going to spend a quiet evening with my girlfriend at home, but she canceled on me. You know, Max added, I was working in Miss Rich's kitchen most of yesterday, and I didn't see anything suspicious. Of course, I left before the other guys did. The officer reviewed the evidence, then called in one of the workers for further questioning. Whom did he suspect and why? Okay, now the answer's on page 320. Let me put this bookmark back in. I think it has to do with that electrical tape. I'm not sure. I know a lot about electrical tape. None of the suspects had ironclad alibis, but the thief did accidentally leave behind a clue: the piece of black plastic tape used to hold open the kitchen door latch. Since the burglary had been a crime of opportunity, the burglar must have had the tape on him during the previous work day. A painter might have used edging tape, a plumber might have used putty or sealant, but the most likely person to have black tape, also known as electrician's tape, would have been Ed the electrician. Yep, I did figure out that one. Okay. That's probably the only one that I figured out so far. Okay, now we are to which Dewdit Did it? Which Dewdit Did it? Okay. That is a tongue twister, and I like it. The lawyer glanced from his client to the three greedy young faces across the room. You're sure you want to do this? Of course, Dewdit replied. I have no children. It's only right that my niece and nephew inherit my estate. That won't be for many, many years, Asa Dewdit said. His sister Beebe agreed, as did brother Cecil. They watched fascinated as Uncle Durwood signed his new will. Nothing happened until late afternoon. The lawyer was browsing through the books in the third-floor library when he heard Durwood's voice raised in a blood-curdling scream. For a few seconds, he sat in shock. Then he bounded down the stairs. He found Asa on the second floor, standing at the top of a little used back staircase. It came from the first floor, stammered the young heir. Do that just to... Okay, it looks like... Did he fall down the stairs? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out that picture. The lawyer took the lead down the narrow staircase. Durwood, he shouted, at the moment later caught... Oh. Durwood, he shouted, and a moment later caught a spider web across his face. The kitchen was right at the bottom. The white marble floor was spotless and still damp from a recent mopping by the maid. The adjacent pantry, however, was quite messy. Durwood Dewdit lay on the pantry floor. He'd been stabbed to death with a paring knife. Oh, well, that's different. The lawyer was careful not to disturb anything. Using a handkerchief, he tried the kitchen door. Unlocked. Looking out into the garden, he could see a path of footprints in the mud leading right up to the kitchen door and then away again. Call the police. The Dewdits and the lawyer all retired to the parlor to await the authorities. An intruder must have come in the back way, Cecil said emphatically. I was sitting in the front hall by the main stairs. I didn't see anyone. Me neither, Beebe said, absently fingering the mud on her shoes. I was strolling around the garden, right by the kitchen. I didn't see a thing. Do you think it might have been one of us? Of course it was, the lawyer snarled, and I can guess which one. Who done it? I'm going to guess it was the sister because of the mud on her shoes. I don't know. 348. Okay. We're going to put this in here so I can find it again. And we need 348. It was a simple process of elimination. The lawyer knew that Asa had not recently used the back stairs because of the unbroken spider web. He also couldn't have used the main stairs, not without being seen by Cecil, who claimed to be in the front hall. Beebe couldn't have entered or left by the kitchen door, not without leaving prints on the recently mopped marble floor. Therefore, it had to be Cecil. So I guess that Cecil did it, so I was wrong. These are challenging. The Pretender's Ball 3. Okay, I love these. There are 4 of these total, I think. Okay. The Pretender's Ball. I'm just going to check right here. Okay, was this number 8? Yes. Okay. I'm just going to check time. Okay. The Pretender's Ball 3. 2 years ago, the Pretender's Ball had been the scene of an assassination. Last year, an arsonist destroyed the Royal Archives. These political crimes carried out by the rebel forces were becoming a regular part of the Grand Duchy's annual costume ball. The chief of police pleaded with the prime minister to cancel this year's event. Naturally, he didn't. For added security, though, he did change location to Duchy's Park, a floral wonderland surrounded by a high, unscalable stone wall. Upon entry, Robin Hood's arrows were confiscated, though he was able to keep his bow and quiver. David had to give up his slingshot, and Goliath handed over his club. Mary Poppins kept her umbrella, but Death turned in his scythe. Even the clown was searched. One guard held onto his big bunch of balloons, while another checked inside his oversized shoes. Okay. I've seen some balloons back there. That's cool. The festive nighttime ball went on as scheduled. The music played, the costumed revelers danced, and champagne corks popped. Something else popped, too, a small Derringer pistol. The victim this time was the Grand Duchy's chief of police, dressed as a Chicago gangster. The only guest actually allowed to carry a weapon. Okay, so the chief of police was actually carrying a weapon, apparently. Was the only guest allowed to carry a weapon. His body was found in the middle of a hedge maze, the gun in his shoulder holster untouched. Shot in the back, death, the royal physician reported. Very small caliber. Anyone could have sneaked in a gun that size. In what was becoming another annual tradition, the guests lined up to be frisked. The Prime Minister observed them. Mary Poppins leaned on her umbrella. Goliath looked chilly in his leopard skin. The clown looked sullen, both hands stuffed in his pockets. 2 hours later, the results came in. There was no gun, not anywhere in the park. The guards around the park's perimeter reported that nothing had been thrown over the wall. I know how our assassin could have gotten rid of the gun, the Prime Minister deduced, and that tells me who our assassin probably is. Who done it, and how did the gun disappear? Okay, and the answer is on page 333. But first of all, we're going to put that in like that. And we're going to turn to page 333 and... Okay. Pretender's Ball 3. When the clown arrived, he was carrying a bunch of balloons. When he was searched, however, his hands were in his pockets. What happened to the balloons? The ever-clever Prime Minister deduced that the clown, a disgruntled royal postal carrier, had tied the light but deadly Derringer to the balloons and sent it sailing into the night sky. That is a good assumption. Okay, up next we have, let me move the bookmark, and we are to page 228. The Nutty Strangler. The newspaper dubbed him that, the Nutty Strangler. Although there was nothing funny about him, 5 times he'd struck, each time leaving nutshells, piles of nutshells. On the first occasion, the body of a businessman was found in an alley. The police barely noticed the walnut shells among the midtown litter. The second time, it was a suburban housewife and peanut shells. On the third strangulation, a secretary in pecans, the homicide squad started looking at photos of previous cases. That's when they made the connection. Maybe he likes nuts, a rookie suggested. Maybe cracking shells calms the psycho down while he waits for the right victim to come by. On the 6th murder, the police caught a break. It was late. 4 officers were just coming off their shifts when they heard a strangled scream. They arrived too late to save the young college student, maybe? 2:30. College student. But one glance at the pile of red pistachio shells told them that they were told them who they were dealing with. The officers fanned out, detaining the only 3 men they could find in the surrounding streets. The first was a homeless man discovered sleeping over a steam vent. There was no alcohol on his breath. The man claimed to have been living on the street for only a week. The police examined his hands. They were large and clean and strong-looking. The second was a man in a suit claiming to be on his way home from the office. I know the subway's in the other direction, he admitted, but then I heard the scream. I got scared. The street here is better lighted. The third was working on his car. It broke down a few minutes ago, he said, pulling his grease-covered hands out from under the hood. You can try to start her if you don't believe me. I was all set to call AAA. The sergeant turned to his companions. I think I know who it is, but there is an easy way to find out for sure. Whom did he suspect, and how can he prove it? Let's see, we need page 328 for this one. After we put this in. Again, I'm checking here. Okay. We've got 2 more to go after this. 328. Oh. Here we go. Excuse me. The Nutty Strangler. Anyone who has ever eaten red pistachio nuts knows that the dye from the shells comes off easily and can stain. The sergeant suspected the man with the broken-down car. He thinks the man saw the officer coming and started working under the hood in order to hide the red dye. If the police carefully wipe his hands, they should be able to find traces of the telltale dye underneath the grease. Okay, now we are ready for hand in the cookie jar. Valerie stretched her 6-foot frame to the top shelf, looking for a hiding place. Taking down an old cookie jar, she slipped in the roll of $100 bills and lifted it back up to its spot above the kitchen cabinets. Valerie flipped aside a lock of golden hair. It was a shame to have to hide things in her own house, but with this bunch of sorry losers visiting for the weekend, it was better safe than, well, sorry. It was a horrible thing to think about her best friend. Sometimes she didn't know what she saw in Glinda. Glinda was strikingly homely, dumpy, and of dubious moral character, but she seemed to admire Valerie and made her laugh. It was even worse to think about her own twin brother, but Valerie had to be honest. Ever since childhood, Victor had regularly stolen from any purse that happened to be lying around. The third guest, Morton Flyer, had been a bass fisherman, maybe? Bassoonist? Oh, basketball star in the NBA. Caught red-handed in a betting scandal, Morton had been thrown out of the spot. He and Victor were now best buddies, sharing their mutual hobbies of gambling and drinking. Just as Valerie finished putting the jar back in place, a slight noise caught her attention. She spun around and no one was there. All the same, she felt uneasy. In the middle of the restless night's sleep, Valerie thought she heard a noise. Going downstairs to check it out, she stubbed her toe on a chair out of place by the kitchen counter. Immediately, Valerie feared the worst. Switching on the light, then checking the cookie jar, the money, all of it was gone. She examined the kitchen, all empty. An empty beer bottle was in the sink, and on the counter lay a short strand of blonde hair, not unlike her own. She remembered emptying the garbage right before bedtime, but in the trash bin now was another beer bottle and 2 bottle caps. Valerie scanned the kitchen again, and suddenly she knew. Okay. Whodunit and how did Valerie know? The solution is on page 318. We're going to put a bookmark in so I can get back here fast. Oops, if the bookmark will stay in. Okay. Now we need page 318. Get in there. Okay. 318. Okay, hand in the cookie jar. The blonde hair, the bottles, and the caps are red herrings. All they show is that Morton and Victor shared a pair of late-night beers. The vital clue is the out-of-place chair by the kitchen counter. 6-foot-tall Valerie didn't need a chair to reach the cookie jar, and neither would her twin brother, nor the professional basketball player, but Glinda, described as dumpy, was well under 6 feet. She was also the only one who would need help in order to reach the cookie jar. Okay. And through the last one for this episode is Around-the-Clock Murder. It was 8:50 p.m. and Jules Marigold was closing up shop. The antique dealer wound all the clocks while her employees tallied up the receipts. When Marigold tried setting the alarm, he was annoyed to find it out of order. Oh, well, he sighed, I suppose one night without an alarm won't kill me. He was wrong. Around midnight, when the downtown Citizens Patrol shone their flashlight through the storefront window, they saw a chaotic mess. Lying in the middle of the mess was the bludgeoned body of Jules Marigold. Marigold lived above his shop. The police theorized that he'd heard a burglar breaking in and that the 2 men had fought. Among the wreckage was a toppled, broken grandfather clock. The hands had stopped at 11:09. I guess that set the time of the murder. Since there was no sign of forced entry, the police concentrated on the only people with keys, Marigold's employees. George LaFleur. Oh, I'm seeing something here. Wait. This is good. See, this is illustrated by Matt LaFleur, and here's a George LaFleur, and it's spelled the same. George LaFleur had been the first to leave. I had a 9 p.m. class, he explained. Antique appraising. I'm planning to open my own business. The professor remembered George. He also remembered ending the class at 10:45, giving George enough time to make it back to the shop and commit the murder. Charlie Weed said he'd walked home, changed clothes, then gone out to a nearby dance club. The club doorman recalled Charlie perfectly. At 11, we started charging a cover. The guy seemed really proud for getting here a minute early and saving himself $5. The bartender also recalled Charlie, who nursed the same drink for over an hour. Derek Posey had left his shop to have dinner, alone at his favorite cafe. The owner knew Derek well and estimated that the young, lonely clerk finished his meal shortly after 10:30. The forensics squad dusted the scene. Prints for Marigold and his employees were found on many items in the shop, but not anywhere on the grandfather clock. Okay. No prints on the grandfather clock, the chief of detectives mused. Then that's a dead giveaway. We have our killer. Who done it and how did the police know? Let's see. So the answer is on page 303. Okay, first I'll put this in here. Okay. 303. Around the clock murder. Okay. Here we go. Since Jules Marigold wound the grandfather clock shortly before closing, the lack of fingerprints on... Okay. On what? Oh. On the clock indicates that someone wiped it clean. The only reason for doing so would be to eliminate a key piece of evidence. So why would the killer need to wipe the prints off the clock? The police deduced that the murder had not occurred at 11:05, but earlier. After the murder, the killer turned the hands forward to 11:09, wiped his fingerprints off, then purposefully knocked over the clock. All the police had to do was find the one suspect with the ironclad alibi for 11:09, Charlie Weed. And that will do it for this reading of this book for now. This has been the 8th episode. This has been a reading from the Little Giant Book of Whodunits by Conrad and illustrated by Matt LaFleur. If you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. And if you want to support me in any way, all the information is in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.